welcome to Pegwarmers. I'm Kevin, and I'm here to talk about toys. Today, we are talking about Chuckles from G.I. Joe Classified, as well as some new toys that have just come out, some news, and a little bit about a recent toy hunt I had at Ollies. So Chuckles is here. This was an SDCC exclusive item. Then it was available on Hasbro Pulse. Josh, who's one of my Patreons, was able to secure me one before it opened up to the larger sale. So that was super helpful. Even though he ended up not selling out right away, it was just nice knowing I was getting a Chuckles. Chuckles is a character from 1987, featured heavily in the G.I. Joe movie as one of the Rawhides, a group of new recruits. This was how they introduced a bunch of new characters in the animation, and Beachhead was training them. Beachhead, being my favorite Joe, made me recreate scenes with these guys quite a bit as a kid. I didn't have Chuckles new on card as a little kid. I got him eventually from a yard sale, but I had several of the Rawhides, and they were kind of, guys I was trying to work my way through. Of course, Chuckles was sort of an odd one. He had no speaking lines in the movie. What a weird decision that was. So the front of the box, he's on sort of a surveillance cam footage shot here of him. Hey guys, and the Baroness and the Crimson Twins from the Crimson Strike Force are in the bottom corner here. And the rest of it sort of looks like it might be a bomb or something like that, with the Extensive Enterprise logo on it. But we're going to pop this thing open and get a better look at this figure. So inside the box, we have a tray that contains Chuckles. And instead of a footlocker, we have a attaché case, perhaps. Oh, and there's also a panel over here on the side that we can open. This reveals a little comic page here that shows Chuckles sort of dealing with a bunch of Cobras and escaping, all in sequential art. I remember my buddy Chris from Comic Tropes doing an episode about this, where the art is showing a sequential set of motion and actions without actually being broken up into panels. There's kind of a cool comic effect there. Most of these classified figures have artwork of the character behind them, but Chuckles just has the print from his Hawaiian shirt on there. When I was in college, I had a stop-motion animated show that was Toy Story in a dorm room, basically, and I used a bunch of characters that were trying to escape the room, and I used Chuckles as the guy who went up into the drop ceiling. He didn't get to escape with the rest of the other action figures, but he had his own separate subplot up in the ceiling throughout every episode. So he ended up getting a lot of screen time, and is a big part of the reason why I love Chuckles so much was sort of this this own persona that my buddy Derek and I gave to the character long before IDW actually made him cool.
Give us the head, or prepare for merciless catastrophe.
Wait a second, guys. Don't you think we can work this out peacefully?
Bring it on. We take no prisoners.
Face the wrath of my holy vengeance.
Oh, please, listen to reason.
He looks great. He's got bright Hawaiian colors on. He's got his holster on his shoulder here. He's got his green pants. It looks like there are some hooks and pegs and loops and holsters to hold all of his equipment, which I believe is in the attaché case here. Even the little baggie for the accessories has the Chuckles floral print on it. Little cardboard box. Alright, so we have Chuckles' briefcase here, which has a little bit of battle damage to it. There's a couple scrapes on it. We have a pair of handcuffs. Chuckles' pistol. Some file folders. He's got his knife. A single handcuff, so you could pull off his hand, put the handcuff over his wrist, and put it back on, so it looked like he cut himself out of a handcuff. He's got brass knuckle hand. He's got a tape deck that looks a lot like Soundwave. He's got binoculars. He's got a lei. He's got a beat-up face. The other half of a handcuff. And this little box, I assume, is his headphones. Oh, headphones and sunglasses. So Chuckles' knife goes on his leg, just like the vintage figure. His pistol's going to go in the holster on his chest. We could put the lay... Oh, you gotta take his head off to put the lay on. Could put the headphones on him, I guess. And let's see. The binoculars. Luckily, I don't have to look like a fool trying to figure this out. Josh, who hooked me up with Chuckles here, let me know that the little clip on the back holds on to the little adjustment or focus dial on the binoculars. So that pegs onto him on the back of his belt. And I believe the tape deck is going to peg onto his belt as well. So I guess you just have to pretend that there's a wire for the headphones, which is probably fine. But there were no wireless headphones. Oh, well, this is modern. This doesn't have to be 1987. I always think of the Joes existing in the time period that the figures originally came out, but Classifieds really is the modern day versions of them, unless they're retro carded. So he probably could have headphones, although that doesn't necessarily make sense with the Soundwave tape deck. And the briefcase does open up, so you can stick his file folder in there. I'm actually probably going to keep his handcuffs in there, just so I don't lose all of this stuff, because they are some teeny tiny accessories. So overall, I think Chuckles is pretty fun. He's a character that I definitely wanted in my Classifieds collection. I could see people passing on him if they're not a big Chuckles fan. He was a Pegwarmer back in the day, but has gained popularity mostly because of his comic book appearances. I think he's a fun character. Not a bad choice for a convention exclusive, because there might be a certain amount of people that just aren't into Chuckles. I like it when the club exclusives or the convention exclusives are characters that are a little more off the beaten path. Somebody that not everyone's gonna have to have. But I think he's a great looking figure, and I really like him. Great job, Hasbro team. I got a couple of new products to show off here. If you are looking for Christmas presents for kids or coworkers, these might be the perfect kind of stuff to check out. This is Geomag. These are magnetic rods that connect to ball bearings. This set happens to be the glow-in-the-dark set. For ages 3 to 99, it has 60 pieces. They come with little cases that all the parts go into to help keep you from losing them. They don't take up anywhere near as much space as this box. This box is more for display and standing out on the store shelves compared to the actual storage of it for your own personal space. So, like I mentioned, you get little ball bearings, you get these little rods that have magnets in the end, and they can connect in lots of different ways. Because it's a ball bearing, it's basically like a ball and socket joint on an action figure, so you can kind of really position these things in any angle you want. There are a couple little trays that come in the set that help you build neat and organized geometric shapes. Here, this cube is melting in my hand as I mess with it, but I use the black tray, drop in the ball bearings, connect them with the rods. Then I start to build up and make the upper rectangle using, again, ball bearings at each one of the corners. And now I have a cube that is made up of these green rods with ball bearings at each one of the corners. And it's glow-in-the-dark plastic. So when I turn out the lights, the rods glow, and that's pretty cool. I think these will be a pretty fun Christmas gift. Great for a kid who likes to build things or explore science and technology. Fun little fidget to have on your desk at work. You need a minute to just kind of recenter yourself, distract yourself from work for a few minutes, see what you can build. So thanks my friends at Geomag for sending this over to me. It's Swiss made. So while I was visiting Josh to pick up my Chuckles figure, I told him I was thinking about heading over to Ollies to see what kind of stuff they had. I've been hearing about them having more and more Classifieds figures there, and quite frankly, I would love to have an extra of the Classifieds Sergeant Slaughter. I feel like an extra Sergeant Slaughter would be really nice. My brother-in-law is a Marine, so I would love to get some of the Marine characters to give to my nephew when he gets a little bit older, but also Sarge is one of those top-tier characters for me, and I might want to customize one or do something with it depending on whether Classifieds gets us every version of Sarge at some point. So that's what I was going to look for, but also just see what other crazy stuff they had at Ollie's. Welcome to Pegwarmers. I'm Kevin, and I'm here to talk about toys. Today, I am going to Ollie's. So, here we are at the Lawrenceville, New Jersey Ollie's. The first thing that caught my eye there was the Great Protector from Shang-Chi. This is a dragon character from that movie. I like beasts and fantasy creatures as toys, and I would have loved to have played with this as a kid, just not necessarily in the world of Marvel or Shang-Chi, but just in the fantasy world of trolls and goblins, Dungeons and Dragons, all that kind of stuff. I did not buy it, but I was very tempted to, and it may be something I pick up if I still see one at Ollies again someday. And they've been there for a while, so I'm not too worried about them disappearing. There was a whole bunch of Star Wars Black Series Moff Gideon figures. I guess people didn't want Moff Gideon? There are still Marvel's Eternals figures. These guys are like the ultimate Pegwarmers. I really should get one for my Pegwarmers collection. That movie just did not push merchandise well at all. They had several Motu Origins deluxe figures like Clamp Champ. Later on, I noticed Battle Armor Skeletor and Battle Armor He-Man. There was one regular Skeletor as well. Lots of retro-style Mandalorian figures. I've reviewed them on the show before, or showed them off on the show before. I like the retro collection, but I guess they're not doing that well at retail. They are kind of a niche thing. If you're really into Kenner Star Wars, then those make sense. I don't think kids really care that much about the Mandalorian in general if it's not Grogu and Din Djarin, and I also could see them not really caring for that retro style. Then I found a whole nother cache of Black Series figures. Dengar and C-3PO and just a bunch of guys, the Emperor. I thought the C-3PO looked pretty nice. I found one random Moss Man from Motu Revelations. I didn't really get many of those figures. Slightly tempted by Moss Man, but I left him behind. I need a flocked Moss Man, personally. What? They still have solo figures. Man, I can't believe it. I don't go to Ollie's that often. Shocked to still see these toys. I mean, not shocked in the sense that I thought they were good sellers, but shocked in the sense that, like, I can't believe they haven't just gotten rid of them. Maybe I should have grabbed one of those for the Pegwarmers archive. I'm still kicking myself for not having a carded Rose Tico. I've got a loose one, but I really should have a carded Rose, and they seem to have been destroyed at this point. I found Wave 1 of the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon figures. They were in the girls aisle, which was odd. There was like a boys action aisle, and then there was like the pink aisle, but the D&D figures were there. I didn't buy any of them because I already have them. They're kind of cool figures, but there was a lot of quality control issues. Maybe that's why people didn't buy them, or there just wasn't an audience for toys based on an 80s cartoon that never had toys in the past. And of course, the only classifieds things I found were Snake Eyes movie figures. But I didn't walk home empty-handed. I did pick up some G.I. Joe stuff. And something from Motu. First thing, I got a Motu Minis He-Man and Road Ripper, or Ground Ripper as they call it now. I know that they had these at Ollie's for a long time. In fact, I think I've passed on this at Ollie's before. But this time, for some reason, it just caught my attention. I just think the mini Road Ripper is pretty cool. More than the He-Man. And I have a bunch of these minis. But the Road Ripper, because it's just a scaled down version of the Road Ripper, it's not really super deformed the way the characters are. That's what kind of caught my attention this time, and I decided to grab it just to kind of round that out. It's a shame we didn't get more of those vehicles from that line. I found a bunch of budget G.I. Joe figures. I've actually shown off a budget Snake Eyes before from Five Below. That there were a little smaller versions. These guys are actually pretty big. Not a ton of paint apps, a little bit. They have articulation at the shoulders and at the heads. They have one removable accessory, and that's really about it. These guys are kind of better as like a focal point in a display than really fun to collect or even play with necessarily. But since I saw him there, I decided to go after him. I grabbed Snake Eyes. He could use a little bit more gray paint, I think. The grenades on his chest being gray might have been nice. He does have the Arashikage logo printed on him twice, since that seems to be an edict these days. And he comes with a sword that he holds decently well. I picked up Roadblock. He's mostly based on his figure from G.I. Joe Classifieds, that Wave 1 version. He doesn't come with the goofy railgun. He's got more of a normal weapon here. The back of his package shows off, though, how much web gear and paint apps this guy's really missing. They didn't really sculpt on his webbing, and he doesn't have really any details painted on his chest. So basically all his paint is on his face. So he's a little bit more basic. but I still picked them up. I did see a Storm Shadow that I passed on, because Storm Shadow had very modern-looking armor around his waist, which I didn't really like that style that much, and kind of his gauntlets. There was also a Duke figure, but the Duke figure, again, very much like Roadblock, looked super bare. He didn't have his bandolier, no paint apps on his shirt at all. Just kind of too bland for me. But my favorite one, and probably the best one, was this Cobra Commander. He looks very much like he did in the cartoon show, or kind of how you can imagine him in the original toys. He's missing a few paint apps. I might custom paint this one just because, who cares? He's a cheap figure, and I'm just kind of using him as a display piece. His accessory is a Cobra staff, but I would love to do the light blue stripe on his helmet, and he really needs his boots painted. Them being all blue is a little bit funny. He might even have a raised stripe. No, not really. Oh, the straps on his knife here aren't painted, so I may go through and customize that. Let me know in the comments down below if you think that you would like to see the results of that. If I decide to paint him, maybe I'll shoot a little footage and stick that in a later video. The last item I picked up, and I don't pick up a lot of roleplay stuff in general, was a G.I. Joe Fortnite crossover. Snake Eyes' Katana. It just looks so much like his version 2 1985 sword, plus the Arashikage logo there. I thought it was kind of neat. I don't collect a ton of roleplay stuff, but when I do, it's like those key swords, so like He-Man's Power Sword, Snake Eyes' sword. I have a Storm Shadow roleplay sword somewhere, the Red Ranger's Power Sword from Mighty Morphin, and I haven't quite figured out where I'm displaying these down here in my basement. There's actually like a ledge that I want to put some on, but I probably have enough with the Red Ranger and He-Man and maybe some other ones. But I have sort of like an interesting ceiling that has little sort of cutout areas for the drop ceiling, and where it sort of changes depths. And I might be able to hang these up there in that space, and sort of display them on the ceiling. So I just thought it was fun, and it was neat to kind of show off and check out some of the cool stuff from Ollies. Well, that place was loaded up with Pegwarmers. I didn't really see any G.I. Joe Classifieds other than the Snake Eyes movie toys, so this wasn't really the result I was looking for, but I did find some cool stuff. I went to a second Ollies. I went to the Ollies I had planned to go to. I went to visit Josh. He told me about his local Ollies. Then I went to the one in Bristol, Pennsylvania. It's a rainy, miserable Sunday, so I got a little bit of extra time. So I did come to the initial Ollies I planned to go to today, the Bristol, Pennsylvania Ollies. We'll see if they have anything different here. I'm trying to find a classified Sergeant Slaughter, maybe. I don't really know what I'm looking for. I just keep hearing that there's been good stuff at Ollies lately, and I want to check it out for myself. New Jersey and Pennsylvania is right across the Delaware River from each other, if you're not big on geography in the U.S., but the Bristol Ollies is a little bit, is really the Ollies that I shop at when I shop at Ollies. So I decided to check that store out also, see if they had any classifieds. I went into the book section first, and they had this Dark Knight Returns mask and comic set. I did not buy it, but I thought it was interesting. The kind of old man Bruce Wayne mask here with like the wrinkles sculpted into it. Kind of interesting, kind of cool. Would be a good present for a Batman fan for Christmas. They had so many rays. In fact, the last time I was there, I was shocked at how many rays there were, and they still have them. Just so many rays. I did find classifieds, and not just the movie ones. I found Lady J. She was the only classified figure I found there besides the Snake Eyes movie figures. I did see some other low-budget G.I. Joe things there, including the Just for Fun brick toys, the G.I. Joe Styrofoam glider plane that was going around for a while, and a few of the other G.I. Joe branded items. And then the last thing I saw there of any interest was a whole bunch of Lightning Collection Yellow Rangers, so I did not pick up anything while I was at the Bristol store. You may have recently seen I did a Halloween video about some horror products from Super Impulse. Well, through continued conversations with them, they sent me another package of items, and I pulled two things out to show you guys today. This is part of their 3.75-inch line. These are 3 3/4-inch action figures. Not really necessarily G.I. Joe scale, but the same height, or the same height as a Kenner Star Wars figure. Today I have 3.5 Beavis and Butthead. So these are small figures, minimal articulation, and they have little bases with them, and the backs of their packages can become a display. Well, I recently talked about that in an episode about packaging and trends in packaging. And so the packaging here can get recycled into a display to have their living room. These are some pretty cool little figures. So here you can see that I can rotate his arms around. He's got one and one like bent arm. His head is articulated. There is no way to have them sit. There's no twist at the waist. But you can kind of have a little bit of minor motion to these guys. But they are pretty cool. And once again, thanks to my friends at Super Impulse for sending these over so we can check them out. These would be great Secret Santa gifts or stocking stuffers for somebody who is a fan of Beavis and Butthead or any of the other characters they have in their 3.5 line. And then we're going to wrap today's episode up with a news item. Hasbro stock is just really underperforming. The headline was Hasbro's having their worst stock month since the 1980s. Their stock has dipped 14 out of 19 days that the stock market was open. It was worse than their record 43% sell-off in October of 1987. They're really taking a hit. It looks like it's down about 18% overall. Luckily for Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast and Baldur's Gate 3 have been doing well. That's helped slow the loss there by, that division making money. But overall, Hasbro has dropped. Mattel has also dropped, but it's not quite as significant. The Barbie movie obviously probably helped them more than the Beast Wars movie helped Hasbro. The Barbie movie was a phenomenon and had to have pushed product considerably compared to the Beast Wars movie. So hopefully Christmas will be good to Hasbro and the toy industry as a whole. Oftentimes that fourth quarter sales really does make or break the companies for the year. Does stock market price really matter to me? Not a whole lot. I'm not a shareholder. I don't make my living off of how well the toy companies do. But I do collect their products and enjoy their products. So if they're not doing as well, that means there can be a reduction in staff. That can be a reduction in product offering. And that's never good for us as collectors or kids that are into the hobby. Power Rangers with the Lightning Collection has scaled back. That's not great for me. G.I. Joe Classified is doing real well, but if there's layoffs within that team, it could impact the results, right? Plus all the other amazing brands that Hasbro has and that they produce. So I'm really hoping that they can ride it out and buckle down. But there's just some scary trends going on for the toy industry. In the comments down below, let me know what you think about the Hasbro stock thing. Let me know what your favorite item was I picked up at Ollies. Is there anything that I took a picture of that I really should have picked up? Was I sleeping on anything there? Thanks so much for watching. Do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so, share this video with a toy collecting friend. If you want to support the channel further, consider joining us on Patreon, and thanks for hanging on the peg with me.